Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea. Mine's freshly renewed. Sit back and relax so we can chat about what is happening up in the stars above us. Happy Friday, everybody. And as you know, it's the third Friday of the month. So I have my dear friends, Pia and Cullen, with me this morning. Hello, Pia. Hello, Cullen, and welcome.
Glad to be here, Janet, as always.
Yay! It's an interesting day for me so far. I got to tell you, this Mercury retrograde has been well, you know, Mercury in retrograde has a couple of different meanings. First of all, we're always, we're all familiar probably with the potential for the technological, mess ups, right? Well, there's also another part to Mercury retrograde, which is about going back to the past. And sometimes that evokes nostalgia. Sometimes it is people that come back to you from the past. And other times, Mercury retrograde is sort of bringing bringing us to the old habits, behaviors, mental blocks, thinking, things like that we can work through. And of all of those, I prefer the stuff that comes from the past, right? Rather than the technological hiccups. And all of that has been happening. The day, let's see, Wednesday was the 14th, was the day that Mercury retrograded back into Leo. And my back went out that day, my lower back. And this is an injury that happened 21 years ago when I was, in my 30s. And I picked up my granddaughter's high chair and moved it, but she wasn't in it. So it wasn't like something really heavy. And my lower back popped and I herniated a disc or something like that. And at the time, I was just starting my metaphysical journey as a metaphysical bookstore owner. And what was happening is, Leo's lower back issues are usually financial in what's going on in your life, a financial issue or an insecurity. And at that point in time, I was scared to death that I was going to fail at being a metaphysical bookstore owner and that I didn't have a lot of, capital behind me to start this endeavor, and lower back out. So fast forward now, I'm like having this, I don't know if you want to call it an existential crisis over money and finances. But as I'm looking ahead at the eventual, my husband is like 4 years older than me. So he's like ready to retire. And I'm the one freaking out because I'm thinking, oh my God, we haven't done enough. We're not ready for this. And that just seemed to put the onus on me to make sure the finances are all in shape. And so that's going on. And then yesterday, so this is a past issue coming back to the present. Thank you, Mercury retrograde, reminding me that I'm still dealing with something to do with, this feeling. And then this morning, my daughter texts me and she says, Chase, my grandson, just left for college on Tuesday, the 13th. And he's maybe, I don't know, 90 miles away. It's a college down in Puyallup. If you know anything about Washington, it's down, to the southern part of the state. So it's not terribly far, right? We can drive there in a weekend. We could drive there in a few hours, a couple hours. And she said that he texted her this morning and said he wanted to come home. And already, I mean, it's only been 3 days, right? He's there to play football, right? He got a football scholarship and all. So last night, so before this happens, last night I'm sitting there watching this new movie called Twisters. It's if you watched in the 90s, there was a movie called Twister, and so this one is sort of different. It's called Twisters, and I was like, I want to watch this movie. Well, I suddenly had this terrible, it was a longing feeling that came over me, because what you and my listeners likely don't know about me is that when I was a teenager growing up, I wanted to be a meteorologist.
Mhm.
and that was what I was going to go to college for. But I fell in love with this guy, and then I thought I was living in SoCal, and so the thought of leaving California for Washington just didn't, feel right. And there was also this other niggling fear around money. Like, how am I going to pay for this? Right? I didn't have parents. So it didn't, my 18-year-old self didn't realize that that would probably prime me for scholarships and financial aid. So I didn't go. But watching that movie last night, I got this real wistful feeling around not having done what I really wanted to do, which was to become a meteorologist. Yet I love what I do now. I mean, obviously, this was more written in the stars. So, Mercury retrograde, which for those of you who are just joining me, this is what we were kind of chatting about, is that Mercury retrograde, besides having the impact on our technology, can also bring up issues from the past and bring us into a sort of nostalgic feeling. And that was kind of what I was feeling. And then I realized something, and this one is even more profound, I think, is that all throughout my life, all through my 60 some years, I keep putting my own wants and wishes and desires on the back burner in favor of doing other things that I think might be more important or might be more, and not that I regret where I am, right? The path I chose was a beautiful path and I love my life, but the reason I didn't pursue meteorology had to do with a guy who I didn't even marry. And then that some guy. And then because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to afford it. So, lesson learned, right? No more. I'm not making decisions anymore. Even my lower back kind of feels better even just declaring that I am not going to allow those issues to sideline me.
Bravo.
So your explanation of different elements of Mercury retrograde are really quite profound. And I would add that in my observation of Mercury retrograde all these decades that I've been here, which is even longer than you've been here, um, um, I think it's about making different choices, making it, because of the repetitiveness of how you've explained how Mercury retrograde can affect us, things from the past. I think the greatest tool of Mercury retrograde for us is looking at what we didn't do for God knows what reasons. It doesn't really matter. If we didn't pursue something, each time Mercury retrogrades, we have the ability to choose something different.
Right.
And you've explained this really clearly, but it's even more important in the way I view life, because every time this happens, we can change course. And if we wanted to be a meteorologist and it didn't work the first time, hey, we can become an amateur meteorologist at this time and pursue it in a different way. And so I think it's the choice point that's the most important, because we do get to view what we didn't do, and that allows us to rethink, well, should I do in some form or some structure closely akin to what we didn't do, maybe different, but
Yeah.
achieve the same kind of for me experience, you know,
Yeah.
not putting my needs on the back burner, but saying, okay, maybe I was a grand person for helping others, or being really, really helpful and generous all these years, all these decades. However, I need to do something for me at this point. So that's how I see Mercury as a really special tool to redesign our lives in a completely different way.
Right. Side note, Mercury retrograding back from Virgo into Leo hit my 29-degree Leo North Node, my
Wow.
destiny. So it's And then he'll retrograde back as far as Uranus. My Uranus is at 22 degrees of Leo, and he's going back to 21 degrees. So these are tender spots already in my chart that have to do with value, self-worth, and self-expression. And to your point, Colin, I have incorporated meteorology in my life. I mean, have a weather station. I'm a weather buff. I love all things to do with the weather. I even went to the University of Washington and met with some of the meteorologists there when I was in college. I actually went to college after I had 4 kids. I don't know what possessed me, but I did. I went to college to study biology and chemistry. And on a field trip, we went to the University of Washington and had discussions with the meteorology department there. It was like this whoa moment for me. So even though I was likely not meant, I could have, but I didn't do the meteorology gig or even the science gig after that. I just didn't do that. It has been the backbone of some of my wisdom with astrology, which is kind of weird,
Mhm.
right? Because usually scientists will say, astrology is a pseudoscience. It's not even real, blah, blah, blah. But that isn't what I see in it. So just interesting paths. And Mercury in retrograde isn't always bad, right? It's not always like beating us up with our technology or with our transportation or with our equipments and things like that. Sometimes he's helping us to reframe and
Mhm.
reimagine ourselves by taking a backwards glance at the previous years in your life. So, yay, yay for Mercury.
I think I think it's one of those things that we can look at and clearly see there's a negative or a positive outcome to that experience of Mercury coming back and giving us another chance to do something. Instead of
Yeah,
seeing it as a challenge, we can see it as an opportunity instead.
I think it's a revealing too in some way, you two, because it feels to me like I had an aha moment while I was putting on my mascara. So I poked myself in my eye because I had this aha moment. I'm like, ah. Um, so and that aha moment was about how many times I've not done what my real true heart wanted to do. And that's a very leonine thing. It's a Leo quality sometimes. And so taking a look back at that, what is it that I'm withholding? And I know what it is in my life right now that I'm withholding myself from that I really want to do, but there's some disconnect, maybe fear, or a limit. So, all of you who are listening this morning likely are feeling this in some way, shape, or form, whether it's your technology blowing up and you're having to face the frustrations about that, or whether things are coming up from the past, or you're looking at some very Leo topics, which would have to do with how you present yourself in the world. Are you following your heart or are you following your head? Those kinds of things. So, and by the way, good morning to all of you out there this morning. There's Tom and Christine, J Lo, Narges. Tom says Twisters is a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, too. LOL. Oh my goodness. Starring the Tasmanian devil. Tom, I love you. Debbie Tippett Meal says, well, I'm having repeat issues, and she is. Oh boy, is she having it. And Lo says, I was deciphering some patterns I was able to notice within a small circle of friends at the age of 28. See, this is the thing, right? If you don't see the pattern, then we're in the unconscious realm and we're just repeating, right? And then suddenly something happens that calls to your attention, some consciousness around it, and now you get to change the storyline. You get
Mhm.
to change the pattern. And that is extremely gratifying, but I guess also a little like wistful, as in I'm looking back going, gosh, where did that come from? Like, but I'm glad it's on my radar now. Good morning, Teddy. Good morning, um, Janet, you have gone on to forecast the astrological weather. Tom, I love you. That's awesome. Joan Durchie, good morning to you. And Debbie Tibbetts Tumio says everything's breaking in her house, including her air conditioning, and she lives in hot Florida.
Mhm.
And at this point, it doesn't even look like the part or something she needs is back ordered. So, oh my gosh, I don't know how she's supposed to. Anyway, Debbie, we feel for you. All right. So, here we sit as well, right? We're having this Mercury retrograde moment, and I hope all of you, are willing to share some of your Mercury retrograde stories. We'd love to see them. But we're also sitting here at this crux of a very powerful, potent, life-changing, maybe if I go out on a limb to say that, series of T squares or set of T squares, astrologically, which are very tense and sort of action-filled energies lining up for us on Monday, the 19th. Pia, tell me, have you noticed this in the Pleiadian-Earth astrology, that there's something big happening right now? And if so, tell us
Yes.
what it is.
On the 19th, on the 18th, we have the chance to sort of put on our crash helmets, our knee pads, our elbow pads, and regulate ourselves for what's coming and self-regulating energy. And then on the day that you're speaking of, the 19th, it's catalyzing energy. And catalyzing pushes everything into action. Whatever needs to happen gets pushed. If it needs to explode, it will. Whatever needs to happen gets pushed into action. Followed by, on the following day, hopefully, if we do our work and pay attention to what is being catalyzed, we move into enlightening energy. So we move out of the darkness into the light, and we have a deeper acceptance of the path that we're taking. And then the following day, on the 21st, we start a new 13-day period of being energy. So catalyzing everything on the 19th. On the 20th, we have 13, which is the integration point of everything we've gone through, and enlightening, bringing in more light. And then the following day, we start into one being, which is an energy of, I can start over every minute. I can start over. Giving us the opportunity to start over and over and over again until we get it the way we like it or the way we want it. So I see this as a very, very potent period. And you would have to add to that from what you're experiencing with it as well.
Well, as we like to say, there are no accidents with life or astrology. And what Pia just described are perfectly lined up energies that are sequential. They are allowing, I won't say causing, because that ruffles some people's feathers about saying that astrological circumstances actually change things, but they allow things to take place. And I think that sequence of 3 or 4 energies are perfectly aligned to allow us, synchronistically talking about Mercury retrograde as we have been, to really look at our lives, really look at who we are, what we've been doing. Did we make the right decisions? Have we been generous with ourselves equally instead of only being generous with others? Have we over caretaken others at the deficit of taking care of ourselves? And I think these lining ups are giving us the opportunity to really switch some of our choices, really switch some of our belief systems about who we think we're supposed to be, not who we really are.
It kind of goes into all different areas of our lives too, because you described so beautifully how Mercury brings us messages to look back at what's repeating in your life and the patterns. But we've also got Saturn retrograde, Chiron retrograde, Pluto retrograde, Neptune retrograde, all these happening at the T-squares, all of these happening on the 19th, all of these happening right at a point of catalyzing. We need something different. So I'm all for it.
Yay, me too, I guess. I mean, I want you to go back for a second, Pia, because you said on the 18th something is that a 10-day then?
No, the 18th is an 11, which brings in more light, but it's self-regulating. So the 11 is universal energy. The earth energy is self-regulating. So we get a chance to put on our whatever we need to be ready for this. Get regulated. Something big's coming on the 18th. And on the 19th, the energy comes in, swoops in. We have catalyzing energy all day. And who knows what's going to happen.
And that's 12 catalyzing then.
Yes.
Yes.
12.
And the energy of 12 is that about understanding or
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. It's about getting it finally. So this
Light
time,
bulb moment.
this time we had the light before the day of the 11th, and on the 12th with catalyzing, we probably, if we pay attention and listen deeply, will understand exactly why whatever is happening personally and collectively is happening. We'll have a clearer view of, oh, this is what needed to blow up, or this is what needed to fall apart, or this is what needed to get started. Whatever it is that gets catalyzed, we'll understand it more clearly. And then the next day we move into 13, we integrate what we've understood, and enlightening, we become a higher vibration, we lighten ourselves up, we get ready to start into a whole new cycle. So I think it's a pretty potent, exciting time.
No kidding. I mean, literally, and we've seen this before, you guys, when there's something big astrologically happening,
Mhm.
it's like layered in all of the different systems that we
Yeah.
use. It's not
Yes.
just one showing us the T-squares and, that kind of thing. It's, all the systems that we can use.
Mhm.
And I love that because it brings coherence. That's
Mhm.
another word. Let's talk about coherence for a moment because I don't know about you all, and this is going to sound very weird, but for years, of course, it's weird because it's me. But for years and years now, like maybe going back into like 2003, 2004, I've had this thought, and now I'm seeing it come closer and closer to being where this world is about to bifurcate, like split.
That's not weird, Janet.
You're
Well,
speaking, you're speaking our language. You're speaking what we have known for a very long time, just like you.
The Pleiadians that we work with, Larkma,
yeah.
they call this the Great Split, and they've been
Ooh,
talking about this for 7 or 8 years. Time is coming, and now people are going, oh,
I'm
is
getting
there
chills everywhere. Woo.
Yeah.
So, So, in that context of this split, or what I'm calling bifurcation, um, let's talk about coherence then, because we are in, the age that we are in is really literally Aquarius.
Mhm.
And if we look at the symbol of Aquarius, it's these, wavy lines, one on top of the other, which, a lot of people take a look at that and say, oh, it's water, right? Because Aquarius is the sign of the water bearer, but it
Mhm.
isn't a water sign, it's air and air interference, right? Those are interference lines. They're not water, right? They're not like the to representation of water. It's really the representation of air. So to go to my meteorological past, um, when big air masses come in together, right? We have high pressure, we have low pressure, or you have a storm that comes in. There's this interference that's occurring, right, between the two. One's turning one way, one's spinning the other way, depending on what hemisphere you're in. And that out of that interference comes coherence, or that's the idea that a storm clears the air, brings the energy back down into some form of equanimity or equality, balance, right? That's the whole idea of a storm. A storm can only exist while the imbalance in the atmosphere exists. So in our own lives, and right now there isn't probably one of you that's sitting there that doesn't realize this world right now is in storm after storm after storm, or change out there on the horizon. And the idea then would be to, allow the storm, because it's out of my hands what's going on in the world, except to say I get to choose how I respond, how I
Mhm.
bring my own life and my own work and my own passions into coherence,
Mhm.
right? With the wave, I'm going to call it the wave of love versus the
Mm,
wave of hate or fear,
I like
That's
that.
great.
right? So tell me about your thoughts on that.
Well,
Coherence. What does that mean to you?
go ahead.
First of all, I just want to comment on your idea of the waves, that there's not waves of water. I've always felt like waves of water are just when we notice them, we can extend the movement of what's going on with the water to the movement of air. They're waves. And it doesn't matter whether you categorize it as one element or another element. The key point is that it's movement, and movement always brings change. So
Mhm.
that's one thing I wanted to comment on.
Well, and chaos generally can be thought of as the great equalizer between, if you use your analogy of two storm fronts coming together that are opposites, chaos is the generating factor that allows the coherence to rebalance, to bring whatever the energies are. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about weather, astrology, storms, waves. Chaos actually is the element that is the great equalizer, the great I'm not going to say balancer, I'm going to say rebalancer.
Right, that's great. I love that, rebalancer.
And so people see chaos as a negative thing. They see chaos as a thing they don't want to be involved with. It's
Unsettling.
It's terrible. It's storm-like. But that thing, and let's go back to meteorology for a moment. The eye of the storm is, guess what? Always calm. There's always a calmness in that middle. And now I'm getting goosebumps all over my body. That calmness is the precursor to the activity that's making the turbulence. And if we're able to see that calm in the middle of the storm, that gives us the trust, or that gives us the faith that it's going
Hey,
to
another
it's
big word. Good.
it's going to be okay. It's going to resettle itself. And I think that's the importance of the word coherence, because coherence does happen after that, whether it's a chaotic, a stormy, a turbulent situation. We always manage to get back to that neutral, rebalanced place. And I think that's a key to understanding all of life. If we have an emotional outburst, it creates a storm. However, if we use that emotion correctly, we're actually going to get more deeply into what's going on inside us. We're going to get more deeply into understanding how the heck we work and how we can project ourselves into a more balanced, a more
Peaceful.
clarified. Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
I would change one word though.
What's that?
I try not to use the word faith, because faith is attached to what we believe in our heads, and trust is attached to a knowingness within our hearts. So I would say trusting that it's going to be great, not just trusting it's going to be okay. Trusting that it's going to be okay, it's going to be great, because we find that calm in the storm. We find that peace in our hearts. If we go to, well, I have faith it's going to get better, we can tell ourselves that over and over again in our head. But if it's attached to a belief system, it's not near as real as something that has no belief, but comes straight from our hearts, telling us everything's going to be okay.
However, did you notice that I used both terms?
Oh, I did.
I used trust and faith.
Yeah, you did.
Because some people within their belief systems feel more comfortable with the idea of faith. That
The whole point is to get them to drop their belief systems and find the trust.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress.
So, two thoughts about this. One, note that the biggest storms on Earth, hurricanes, always have an eye in the center, right? And in that eye, it's peaceful, it's calm. You'd never know. There's this chaos swirling all around that eye for sure, which I always think of that as a model of us, right? There is chaos going on all around us, most of which we cannot control. And all we need to do then to be okay is to come into our center, right? In your center is the place of peace, is the place of calm, is the place of discernment and being able to choose. But so many times we keep bumping into the eye wall of that storm that's going on around us, and it, think of like a pool cue ball, right? You hit it and the balls just go everywhere. So when we are bumping into that chaos, it shoots us across into, more chaos. So we need to come into our center. Second thing, to your point, Miss Pia, in human design, there is a gate of faith. It's also linked to abundance, but it's on the emotional center, the solar plexus. So it links us to our hearts, to our being in a space of understanding what the emotion is, and using the emotion in its proper perspective, as opposed to what we typically do, which is react
Yeah.
to what it is that's going on around us. So the concept of faith, if it were meant to be something of the head, it would be in one of the top two head centers in our human design, but it is not. It's on the solar plexus, which, as most of my audience knows, and I think you and I and Cullen have talked about this, it is the one center that is under an evolutionary pressure right now as we move closer and closer to 2027, which is literally only 3 years away, 2.5 years away. Wow.
Excellent perspective, Janet. Accepted, noted. Excellent perception. Thank you.
Yeah. So while I get what you're saying about faith being, in a mind thing, it's really never meant to have been there.
Well, that I totally agree with.
Yeah.
I completely agree that it was never meant to be that way.
Yeah. It just got that way. And
It just happened.
yeah. And now we can fix that. We can, fix is the wrong word, because we are not broken, but we can reset it, recalibrate it, regulate it. There was another word that Cullen used, and now it's lost on me, but it's a reset, essentially, that we are approaching, and that all of us are feeling in some way, shape, or form, right? That reset energy. So Tom says he chooses not to throw the computer across the room, and I've had to make that choice before too.
Me too.
He said, he had to restart the computer and missed what Cullen was about to say about reacting.
Well, what I was getting at is the emotional blowups are happening because we're not in that zone that you just referred to, Janet, about the calm, the peace in the middle of the storm. And what we're trying to teach ourselves to do is, if an emotional reaction wants to rear its ugly little head, what we need to do, and our friends Larkma have talked about this for the entire time we've been working with them, as quickly as you can, reorient yourself. If you feel an emotion coming up, if someone triggers you, the faster you can turn that reaction into a response rather than reacting in a volatile way, the easier it is to rebalance ourselves, to as you said, reset ourselves. So using the emotions in the proper way that they were probably designed for us is catching it as quickly as possible, and not having that knee-jerk, oh my God, here's another roller coaster experience I'm going to create in myself and around me, around everyone else. Just redo it. Take a breath. Larkma also said this once: take that emotion or that thought for a walk around the block before you do anything with it.
That's a great idea.
Don't just react to it. Don't just do what we normally would do. And it makes a terrific difference in understanding that we don't have to have a blow up. We don't have to have a blowout. We just have to realize that, once again, either we triggered ourselves, someone else triggered us, and it's actually a learning curve situation. It doesn't have to be a a negative situation. It simply has to be something that's being brought to the surface. And by bringing it to the surface, we can heal it immediately.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, this is up to you to do. Like no one else can do this for you. This is
Right.
your responsibility, right? Responsibility. And every one of us is capable of doing this, but we've gotten into a habit of reactionary energy. And we see it all around us. We see it in the bigger, wider world, in the collective, right? We see it in the Israel-Iran sort of thing going on, and it doesn't have to be that way, but that's what's out there. It's the habit that we've gotten into, and we can break this habit. And one of the questions that somebody asked out here, Tina Wilden, I'm going to botch that name. I'm sorry, Tina. We'll just call you Tina. How do we get this message to students in middle and high school?
Well, one thing that would help with that, and I know you have something to say too, Cullen, one thing that has gotten us into this situation is speed, because we think we have to have an instant answer to everything. If we don't know the answer, we run to Google. If we want to talk to somebody, we text them right now. Everything has to be instant with us. And that invigorates the energy of an instant reaction. Something happens, I'm going to react right now, because we're accustomed to speed. So in dealing with kids in middle school and, whatever ages up and down that are having that problem, I would say one of the best things you can teach them is slow down and breathe.
Yes.
Just slow down and watch your breath, breathe for a few minutes, look at the trees, walk outside, then come back and say whatever you need to say instead of punching Johnny in the nose.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in PE, physical education, all kids, middle school and high school, have to have a certain number of credits in physical education. Why not bring in a yoga couple of weeks, right? And because part of yoga is always a sort of meditation too, right? We usually end a yoga practice in some form of meditation or shavasana, something like that, which would introduce kids to this idea that slowing down is okay.
Right.
There have been people on this planet who tried to teach this very thing. Rudolf Steiner, in his Waldorf system, attempted to teach children not only to slow down, but to be more meditative, to be more I don't know how to say this that'll make the best sense, to be more self-aware. And there have been a number of schools in India. Sai Baba, when he was alive, created a school system where he brought yoga, either in the physical form of yoga, bodily movement, or the yoga of meditation. He brought this to this age student population. And there have been studies looking at how these children developed, how these children changed their lives by using these calming, peaceful, meditative techniques to do exactly what the question your questioner was asking about. What's wrong with modern education is not only is it too fast, it's filled with information that's absolutely unnecessary for children to be given.
It's also based on competition.
It's
who gets the highest score in the room. It's not a good system.
Yeah, but I want to roll this conversation back about 6 or 7 points that both of you have been making. The instant reaction that both of you were talking about has to do with safety. The reason that we react so quickly isn't just because of the speed of the world that has been unfortunately brought to us by technology, but we react quickly in a safety maneuver to keep ourselves safe and attempting not to be fearful. And what we need to understand about ourselves, our human psyche, the depth of who we really are, is we need to stop trying to be safe. We need to stop trying to have this bubble of, oh, I don't want anything bad to happen to me. I don't want anybody to bother me. I don't want any adverse situations. That all has to do with fear. And that fear then has to do with our own personal safety. And we've been taught to be wary of others. We've been taught to be wary of anything that could damage us, anything that could spook us. We need to retrace and recalibrate that kind of understanding that, hey, the world is really a supportive place. The universe is a supportive place. We don't have to be on that knife edge of what's going to happen next.
And hey, she really does love me, even if she gets mad at me, or he really does love me, even if he said something that he didn't mean. That's part of the fear also. That's really well said, Cullen. You explained
Yeah.
that really beautifully.
And it's a thing about gaining wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And as we get older, of course, we gain more wisdom, and our reactions, if you will, aren't always as primal as they were when we were younger. So it makes sense then to teach the younger generations, how is it that we can deal with things like fear, or with things like emotional upheavals, or things like that. So um, I agree. I think the schools would be a good place to do this. And
One thing I can add, Janet, if I can
yeah,
just insert this.
yes.
When I was working with preteens in one of my previous incarnations, one of the things that I did to stop conflict, if somebody was being really mean to another kid, I taught the kids always to look at them and say, wow, this person must be really hurting to be that mean right now. Turn it around to compassion for the other. And it stopped a lot of fighting.
That is really powerful, because like I'll do that in the grocery store, right? If the checker is being snotty, or is just having a
Yeah.
bad day, I'll say, "Oh, it sounds like you've had a challenging day."
Mhm.
And giving them the opportunity to call it back, right? So that they
Mhm.
don't have to keep expressing it.
Yep.
They could say, "Yes, it's been a tough one," and then you get to say something like, "Well, I wish you peace in the next
Yeah.
part of your day," or something, to that effect. And it's something I think that we don't teach. I don't think we teach kids interpersonal relationship things, right? What they get is the mirror of all of the people out there in their world,
Mhm.
that may or may not be living according to any kind of peaceful situation.
Mhm.
So they're seeing, oh, well, when somebody pisses you off, you punch them, or you call them names, right? We have someone running for president who just loves to call people names. And like, why? Like, don't do that. It's just not, it just isn't, I don't know. It doesn't
It gives,
uplift, it brings people down.
and
Yeah.
it gives them the wrong idea of power
Oh,
also. There's
absolutely.
so much more power in being compassionate and non-reactive than
Mhm.
there is in punching somebody or calling them a name.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Much more power in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a missing link in families these days, I think. Um, a lot of parents believe that their children should learn everything they need to know in school. They put the responsibility on the teachers, or the administration, or the counselors, that they the children should get everything they need at school. And I think parents on the whole don't do a very good job of really teaching their kids what's really important at home. I
And
think,
but to be fair, parents are stressed to the max,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
They're working full time, they're trying to feed everybody, clothe everybody, get things done. And I'm not making this as an excuse either, because I was a parent of 4 kids. I mean, I know at the end of my workday, I would come home and how much energy is left over for, the
Yeah,
children. And I mean, I made that happen, but a lot of people don't have that skill in the first place.
that's
So
absolutely
so we've
correct.
got to teach the skills. And you're right, parents need to be the responsible party, because it's up to them. I get irritated when, parents like blame the schools, or think the schools aren't doing a good enough job, but the schools, their hands are tied.
Mhm.
right? They're getting a child in their classroom or in their school that's been conditioned by the people in their world, their lives, and a lot of kids don't have a very calm or peaceful existence at home.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
That's
think
true.
I think we could go so far as to say most kids don't have that advantage. And
Right? Yeah.
you know, it's really funny. There's always been a joke about who should have kids. We have to have a driver's license to drive, but we don't have a license to have children. And it is a funny joke. It's a funny thing to say, but a lot of people just don't do a very good job of what they could do. And I know everybody's tired. I mean, Pia and I work a god awful lifestyle of we're way too busy. We work more than we do anything else. And I know what it's like not to have the energy. Boy, this is emotional. It's
It
affecting my
is apparently. It's your
yeah.
throat.
We know what it's like to be too busy and not to have the time to do things that maybe are more important than the work we think we're doing or
Mm,
accomplishing. So I do understand that point that you made, but
mhm.
at the same time, I don't think everybody's doing as good a job as they could, and it has to do with priorities. It has to do with what's really important at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. But we also need to have compassion for everyone,
Mm.
because we don't know what that situation is. We don't know what stressors those parents are under. Some countries, Colin, to your point, when a new parent goes home, they take that baby home, they actually have like somebody, a counselor, I don't know, a coach that goes along with them to sort of help them orient to, you know,
Mhm.
managing life that now has a newborn in it, and sets them up for a future that is much better in terms of teaching them how to deal with this infant, right, or this new life. In this country, of course, that is not happening. Here, have your baby, get out of the hospital, see you later, bye.
Yeah.
um
Social
and
social services are
lacking.
it's it even in industrialized countries. I mean, we could use America, we could use Sweden, we could use the UK. The need for social services to do exactly what you just brought up is way more important than putting money into other situations that the government thinks is more necessary. I'm completely in alignment with what you're explaining here. Social services should come first, not war,
I
not
was going to say, like the war machine. Yes,
yeah. I
we
mean,
need new multi-billion-dollar planes. Uh-huh.
yeah. I mean, a $50 billion aircraft carrier. I, we should be putting that into reducing poverty, reducing hunger, reducing all the things that every human should have available to them
Yeah, it's kind
automatically.
of upside down, right? Like
It
Oh,
is.
it's
It
we're
is.
it's
spending a bunch of money at the top here for defense, right? But if we spent the money in the bottom, in the social services and in the social fabric of our communities, of our countries, of our world, then we could flip that, and there wouldn't be such a need for defense.
That's right.
exactly.
I, you said that it certainly isn't happening that someone goes home with the newborn in the family. When we were living in Colorado, I had a very good friend who dedicated her life to a job of doing just that. And she was always booked with clients. She would go home with the newborn, with the mother, with the father, and she'd stay for about a week, or she'd
Yeah.
come every day. If she didn't stay the whole time, she would come every single day, maybe 10 days until they got adjusted. There's a term for that, and I don't remember what it is. There's a doula, which is
That's more like a midwife.
which is the midwife, and there's
Yeah.
something similar to doula that
Yeah.
she called herself, but I don't remember the term.
Well, they have death doulas now, so there must be
Yeah,
a life doula, right? Or a birth
maybe
doula or
something like that. She had a term for it. I just don't
yeah.
remember the term. I
The
remember her service.
but the service is awesome, and I'm so glad there are people out there, but that what that does is limits to the people that can afford those kinds of services to
Yeah.
pay for them,
Yeah,
because it's
that's,
certainly not being paid for by insurance, or there's
yeah,
not a social program that insists that you have access to this for the first 6 to 8 weeks of your newborn's life, and that's the difference, right? We've gotta get it into our consciousness so that it's available
to every,
widely and not
yeah,
just to those people that can afford, because I'm sure she, as heart-centered as she is, she was doing that for money, right? As her living.
well,
So,
not much. She didn't make a huge salary on it, although she worked all the time with it. So she did it from her heart to make money and to be of service.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and
This
some
this
people will do that, but again, not all people can afford that.
yeah,
yeah. The social services in Europe allow husbands and wives to have 3 months of maternity leave after the birth of their child, so that they actually have time to spend with this new little being without having to go back to work immediately. And
Our state does that now too.
that's
great.
great.
Yes, and, like, my son and daughter-in-law, when they had Lila back in November, she got, oh, I wanna say it was 5 months to be able to, draw on her, um, short-term disability. It's not called that, it's got another name. So, Family Leave Act, FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, and then he was able to take 3 months, 12 weeks if he, needed to or wanted to. So, I think that consciousness is changing
It
as,
is.
we go down the road here, but that's, one way to support that social safety net network, I don't know what you wanna call it, but that starts young, right? We start
Yeah.
young, supporting the parents, supporting the children as they go up. Um, Now, Tina, no, do not be sorry. She says, "I'm sorry my question may have gotten us off track, but it's a wonder-filled conversation." And I wanted to go back to something that Lo said when we were talking about the eye of the storm and all of that. She said, "The word given to me over 6 years ago, the eye, in all caps, of the storm, I've just received so many meanings for it as my journey continues." Right?
Hmm.
That's huge, right? What she's basically saying, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Lo, is that she's learning to take responsibility for moving herself into that center,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? As the storm rages around, she's in that center. Um, there was something else that I saw. Okay, well, ugh, sorry, they go by so fast. Oh, Christine Buckingham, when you were looking for the right word a little bit ago, she said self-reflective question mark.
Mm,
So
that's good.
maybe that was, yeah. All right. So now I just want to get one other astrological point across, right? We've talked in my morning shows for the last 2 weeks, actually, about these T squares and about how to handle them and how to work through whatever it is that's, that you're being pushed to. But there's another thing that eluded me that I found out yesterday, and I totally forgot that this full moon that occurs on the 19th, when everything is coming to this head, is also a blue moon and
Mhm.
a super moon, the first of
Mhm.
4 super
Mhm.
moons. So August, September, October, and November. So that brings this even more into um, an exquisite opportunity for us to reorient, re reset ourselves
Mhm.
during this time period that we are in. Self-regulate, I think you said, was one of those days. Pia, the 18th, I think you said, or night, whichever day. And a blue moon. There are two meanings for the blue moon. One, we say a blue moon occurs when there's 2 full moons in 1 month. But that
Mhm.
isn't the case this time, right? We only have 1 full moon for August. But the other meaning of a blue moon is when there are 3 in a season, right?
Mhm.
So, uh, this is the 3rd full moon of summer, and that makes it a blue moon. And it makes it a super moon because of its relative closeness to the Earth. It comes within 90% of the closest approach that the moon makes to the Earth on her transit around the Earth. So it is powerful. It's big. It's critical almost even, I think, for each of us to come to our own aha moments about what all of this is energetically aligning us with. And just to let everybody, kind of tapping in again, the full moon is at 27.15 degrees of Aquarius. So the moon is in Aquarius, the sun is in Leo. And in the Eastern time zones, that's at 2:26 p.m. on the 19th. And in universal time, it happens the next day. It's 18:26 p.m. So that'll be on the 20th, I think, for then Europe and places that direction. Pacific coast, if you're here on my coast, 11:26 in the morning. So we, at least here in the US, we're not actually going to be able to connect with it in terms of it's daytime, right? We're not going to necessarily see this happening, but we can tap into it. And I went to the Sabian symbols because I wanted to get some key words about the meaning of that degree of the full moon. And the words I got were intelligent foresight.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, intelligent foresight. And I wanted to speak to that for a minute because, foresight is when there's a couple of ways to think of this, right? There's the logical way to look at this, which is the foresight, the recognition of a pattern and how the pattern can repeat. So we can predict an ending or the next step based on the pattern. Intelligent would mean that it is something that we're using consciousness towards, right? To consciously tap into the next step, the next opportunity, those kinds of things. So I love this full moon, and it's pointed in the T-square that the full moon creates. It's pointed at Uranus. So it looks like this. Look at the pink line here. Oops, over here. So if you look at the pink, that's a T-square. Looks like an arrowhead almost, right? And it is formed from the sun up at the top there, opposing the moon down at the bottom, and pointed over here at the planet Uranus in Taurus. So intelligent foresight, and then having the gumption to do the things that you need to do to change, to transform, to move out of the old, right? It is audacious. It's audacious. It's an audacious new moon, full moon. And by the way, this in human design is equated to the gate 30, which is on the emotional center. It's called the gate of passion. And it is an energy that causes us to really align or pursue our hopes, our dreams, our goals, our passions in a very intense sort of way. There's an intensity to this moon that is underneath it all, right? You first glance, you see it's in Aquarius, and you're like, yeah, okay. But if you start to look at all these pieces that are built up to this moon, it being a super moon, it being a blue moon, it is a rare opportunity for us to break out of the old and break into the new, even though it's a full moon.
That's great.
I think your term opportunity is absolutely on target. These energies are going to give us the opportunity to zoom ahead, to really make some earth-shattering changes, both personally, interpersonally, and globally. So opportunity, I think, is the absolute accurate descriptor.
Yeah. It's a great, to me, this is like an opportune moment for all of you, not just me or for Pia and Cullen, but for all of you. And you all may not know your astrology chart as well as, say, I know my own chart or something like that, but you can feel it. Like if I didn't know my chart, I would know that there are some key things that are up for change in my life. And tap into that, right? You don't have to have the chart to tell you that something big is up. You just don't, because you could feel it in your body somewhere, and it might be more intense for some people versus others, and
Mhm.
that can be because of the nature of the chart, but also the nature of your own conscious evolution, all of that. So just tap in, people, and be willing to, be honest with yourself about where are you holding yourself back and what needs to change in order for you to move yourself forward. Don't be fearful of that future. And I don't know, I'm sure we'll find out more about the whole bifurcation, split, two paths opening up thing as time goes on. But ensure that you're headed toward love, and that will always keep you in the right direction, right? It's all about the love.
Perfect.
Um, Any last thoughts that you guys want to share? Anything, any big news? I know I should tell everybody next month Pia and Cullen won't be with me because they are off on hopefully a vacation. I didn't hear where you're going, but hopefully it's fun. And then you'll be back in October, and then November again you're on vacation, I hope.
Possibly work on the November trip, but the
Yeah.
September is taking some time off. Yes.
Yeah, I would say they're both healing adventures.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Everybody needs those healing adventures. And so we'll miss you next month, but we'll see you in October. And anything else big that's going on? Tell us about the calendar. Is there a 2025 edition that's coming out?
Not at the moment. I don't know if we're going to get a 2025 or not.
Yeah,
It's
Ooh.
up in the air.
yeah, it's a big
project.
it's a big decision right now because we've done this for so many years. It's part of our lifestyle, and so much is going on. We just don't know.
Oh my goodness. Well, we'll leave it at that. If we don't know, we don't know. That doesn't mean that we don't tap into what
Right.
the wisdom is of that calendar. All right, guys. Thank you, Pia and Cullen, for being with me this morning. It's always interesting, always enlightening, always fun. Thank you all listeners for joining us this morning. And one last thing, before you leave, hit the thumbs up button or the like button, share the video with your friends, and may you find peace in this coming week, in your life in general. Mwah. Much love to everybody. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye bye for now.